Okay, welcome to the next tutorial in Diagnostics 3.0. This particular one is on the visual decision tree. So if you've got your software open, you want to open it to the visual tree section. And first thing you'll notice when you open it is a similar outline over on the right-hand side that you saw in the verbal decision tree. So if you've gone through the verbal decision tree, this should look kind of familiar to you. Similar process from the verbal decision tree, but a different way of processing information. This one's a little more visual rather than so verbal. So if I know what category I'm considering for a client, any of these categories will be represented. Let's say the particular client that I'm working with, again, has an eating disorder, as we talked about in the verbal decision tree section. If I click on eating disorder, it gives you a visual tree that shows you a general description of what eating disorders are. And then in the gray, which by the way, you can notice the icon changes to a finger and a hand. Any of these are clickable. When you click these, you read them and you click them, it suggests diagnoses over here for you to consider based upon the way you're responding. So as I read through these, if it fits what I think my client's presenting, then I'm going to click on it and it's going to suggest a diagnosis based upon my response. So the first one is attempts at controlling body weight below a normal level via exercise and other means. If I click on that, let's say that fits my client's profile or the symptoms that I'm seeing, you'll notice over here it suggests a diagnosis based upon my response. As I go down through these, I can click on them or not. So attempts at controlling body weight in spite of binge eating via purging or other means, let's say that doesn't fit. Other eating disorder does not meet the criteria for a specific eating disorder. Just to keep correlated with what we did in the verbal tree, I'm going to go ahead and select that because that's an eating disorder, NOS. And then there's other types of eating issues that come up for people. Failure of an infant, for example, a very young child to eat and leads to weight loss or lack of gain. That's a feeding problem. Eating non-food material. You've heard of pica before. Infants or children regurgitating partially, digesting food or to chew again. And I mean, there's these three are particularly focused on the childhood disorders, but they involve eating, so they were included. To keep it correlated with what we did in the verbal decision tree, the two disorders that were noted based upon my responses here were anorexia nervosa and eating disorder, NOS. And again, these are clickable. So if I go to criteria and I click on one, I can read the criteria for it and see if it fits. I can click on the other one and read the criteria for it and see if it fits. And the idea here is to help me kind of narrow, consider the possible diagnoses, consider rule outs, so I can rule out information with my client in future interviews or looking at notes or whatever to help me determine if I'm getting to the diagnosis that I need to get to. But it's a way to kind of visually quickly compare and contrast these two diagnoses to see which one fits. Again, same thing as in the verbal tree. I can view those, same as clicking on them. I can mark them for use in other parts of the program. Which, by the way, if you determine one of these diagnoses is the diagnosis for your client, you want to mark it because that will be able to be used then in the 5-axis diagnosis section. Or you can delete these from the list to remove the diagnosis from the list so that you're not confused by it. So let's say I've ruled out eating disorder NOS. I can unmark it so it's not in the section, and then I can delete it here from the list. And now I'm left with anorexia nervosa. Now, by the way, when you delete it, you're not deleting the entire diagnosis from all of diagnostics. You're just deleting it from from the visual tree findings. So it's not volatile information. You're safe to delete those without worrying about losing information in your database.